Hello, and welcome to In Touch with Durham County. I am Dawn Dudley, Senior Public Information Specialist for the Durham County Manager's Office. I'm filling in today for your normal co-host, Deborah Craig Ray. Joining me is our co-host, Wendy Jacobs, Chair of the Board of County Commissioners.
Thank you, Dawn. We use this program to inform Durham citizens about the programs and services that are provided by Durham County government.
Following significant votes by Durham and Orange County Commissioners, respectively in April, the Durham-Orange Light Rail Project is a step closer to becoming a reality in the Triangle. Jeff Mann, Go Triangle General Manager, and John Talmadge, Go Triangle Director of Regional Services Development, join us to talk about what this now means for our region and the growth of our future.
Let's begin our conversation. Thank you, Jeff and John, for being with us here today. We know we've just spent some time updating and improving our bus and rail investment plan for Durham. And can you give us some background about why this was important to take place?
Sure, I'll go ahead. Back in 2011, the county, the Regional Transportation Planning Organization called the MPO and Go Triangle adopted the original bus and rail investment plan. And it had been a number of years. Changes had occurred to a number of the assumptions about the funding, both for the light rail and a lot of the bus projects, as well as the commuter rail project. There were delays in Wake County adopting their plan, and so adjustments had to be made to the plans. There were also, as we're moving forward with the light rail project, a requirement from the Federal Transit Administration to do those by a date certain, and that was April 30th of this year. So we pulled together the county, the city, and then the jurisdictions on the Orange County side to work together to meet that deadline, and those plans were adopted at the end of April.
John, if I might expand just a little bit, one of the key changes or events that took place that required or led to updating the plans in April was a change in the assumption around state funding. The plans originally assumed that the projects in the light rail, Durham-Orange Light Rail project in particular, would receive a 25% state funding. That is now kept at 10%, so it caused us to revisit with our partners in Durham County and Orange County how we would finance the project. So that was a big change that required us to go back and take a hard look at that, which I think we've done and come up with a good solution.
Right. And also, if you could elaborate, besides the change in the state funding that we had to deal with, we also did end up having a change in the number of stations for Durham. If you could talk about that. And also, we also often focus on the light rail, but if you could explain some of the other investments that are in the plan as well.
Sure, I'll take the first part of that, John, if that's okay. A real exciting change to the plan in 2016, we were able to add North Carolina Central stop, whereas before the last stop to the east was the Austin Avenue stop. It had always been a goal to serve NC Central. It had been a challenge from an engineering standpoint. We were able to find a way to do that, which I think is exciting. It does add project costs, creates an 18th station, whereas before we had 17 station, extends the total route miles to right at 17.7, but I think absolutely vital to the system. It's a great addition, and we're excited we're able to do that. Now, John, if you want to talk about the other aspects of the plan.
Yeah, the light rail transit project, although it is transformational in nature, it is a long, big capital project that will take years before you can walk on board and ride that train. But in the meantime, we have transit needs now, and we've had them since 2012 when the taxes were levied in order for improvements to be made. And so the Durham bus system, Go Durham, has been expanding service, creating frequent routes down Fayetteville Street, down Chapel Hill Road to University Drive, and out Holloway Street, as well as working toward improvements to the access to the bus stops, both sidewalks and then the conditions at the bus stop with bus shelters. And so those are all funded, and we had to look at what was going to come from the local transit tax dollars to make up for some of the removal of state and federal funding that has occurred through changes to laws over the last few years.
Going back to the conversation about light rail, I want to make sure we give our viewers a little bit more context and information about what light rail is or commuter rail is. Can you explain the difference between commuter rail and other rail options in our community?
Sure. Well, commuter rail is a heavy rail, what we call heavy rail technology that shares existing track infrastructure with freight and passenger trains. The vehicles are built to do that. We'll have to add capacity when we build the Wake to Durham commuter rail to the existing trackage, but it operates in mixed traffic with other services, and it typically operates over a longer distance. So, for example, in the Durham County plan is commuter rail in the out years. Wake County already has commuter rail in its plan and hopes to implement in the next 10 years. From Garner to West Durham with stops in between, including RTP. That will be a 37-mile line. Not as high frequency as light rail, longer distance between stops, generally linking metropolitan areas as opposed to moving between closer areas. Light rail, the frequency will be every 10 minutes peak, 18 stations in about 18 miles, so about a station every mile, operates in a dedicated fixed guideway, so no other rail traffic other than the light rail vehicles, much higher frequency, moving between a closer area as far as distance goes.
Okay. So what do we have in place already?
Well, we have Amtrak service.
We have an
That's
Amtrak
fine.
service already,
Right.
and there are no other types of pre-existing prior to, I guess, anything that was here years ago. I'm interested to know. You know, in some communities you have things like
there
that.
were streetcars here in Durham years ago, but as in many cities, most cities around the country, the tracks were paved over. They were replaced with the buses that the earlier generations of buses that run on our streets today. But that was a long time ago when the streetcars left the city of Durham.
And before we leave this topic, just want to point out the Piedmont Service and the Carolinian that are sponsored by NCDOT and paid for in part by the state that serve Durham today. We have a tremendous opportunity. They recently have been upgraded, those services, a $545 million investment to upgrade track capacity to improve reliability between Charlotte and Raleigh and through Durham. We will now have the opportunity, and this is very unique to our region, to connect that Amtrak state-sponsored service in Durham with light rail at the Durham Transit Center and commuter rail in the future when it's built. So we have an anchor downtown Durham of a true multimodal hub linking commuter rail, light rail, and intercity rail, which is Amtrak. We can do the same thing in downtown Raleigh. It's the two anchors of the triangle, where the almost $90 million Raleigh Union Station will be complete in January. It will serve commuter rail in the future. It serves intercity rail today. It will serve bus rapid transit and conventional bus. So we truly will have a multimodal campus in downtown Durham and in downtown Raleigh, connecting the region as if it's never been connected before, which is a huge opportunity. A lot of regions would love to have that opportunity.
It's very exciting.
Yeah, sounds amazing. So tell us why it's so important to enhance our existing transit system.
If I might take it first, I think if there's mobility benefits. Folks have to be able to access health care and jobs and recreation. That's critical. A lot of folks don't have another choice as far as a vehicle. A lot of folks don't want a vehicle. They're choice riders. They're riding because they don't want to have a two-car family when they could have a one, or they want to go without a vehicle. The average cost to own an automobile annually in North Carolina is over $9,000. So if you have a public servant, whether it's a firefighter, a teacher, or a policeman, whose household income is less than $50,000, if we can provide vital transit assets to them that allow them to not have a car, to go from a two-car household to a one, we're returning almost 25% of their annual household income back into their pockets so they can do other things with that and make other investments. So I think that's critical. The other thing that's absolutely critical, if we're going to compete as a region and continue to be on the Forbes 100 list and all the other lists that we're on, and we're going to compete with other communities or towns like Seattle and Portland and Houston and Austin, Orlando and Boston, and all of these cities that we compete with for jobs and economic development, we have to have these transit amenities in place because they do, and they're investing. And if we don't invest in a region, the millennials and other workforce and the talent out there that these companies will demand if they're going to locate in Durham or they're going to locate in Raleigh or anywhere in between, we're going to have that mobility and that asset in place.
The other thing that's important about this corridor, the light rail connects downtown Durham, starting North Carolina Central, downtown Durham to Chapel Hill, UNC. Everybody knows about the growth we've been seeing and the change we've been seeing in both communities, but particularly here in Durham. We need to be able to focus the growth that's coming in the future so that people don't need to bring their cars, everybody bring their cars into downtown Durham. We already have parking capacity constraints. The University, North Carolina, Chapel Hill, doesn't want to just add more parking and more parking. They want to keep the character of the place. There are opportunities in between to build new places that really attract people, that people are going to want to be. And that's the promise of light rail, is at each station location, there can be a walkable community around it. Some of them are downtowns, some of them are going to be neighborhoods, some of them will be entertainment, some will be office. But you string those along, and now you have a whole set of living options, work options, play options that don't require all that parking that is often required today.
Absolutely. And you know, unless you have not left your house in the last few years, or you don't get in your car at peak hours, rush hour, going to Raleigh or going to Chapel Hill on 40 or 54 or 15501, then you don't know. I mean, the amount of congestion that we are already experiencing, the amount of traffic. I mean, we have to have a way to address it. And as you were referring to, John, we're supposed to have 1 million more people coming to our region by 2050. And so where are we going to put all those people? And, you know, we've got to find a way to get some of those cars off the road or give people other options if we're going to have a good quality of life here.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
I agree too. Earlier you talked about the 17, well now 18 stations. Can you tell us where light rail will not go? Well, if you want to talk first about where it will go, if you want to enhance or elaborate, and then tell us where it will not go.
Well, the line will begin at the North Carolina Central Station. Again, we think that's a great addition to the plan. Then it will, there's an Austin Avenue station after it passes over 147. There will be a downtown Durham station, a Dillard station, and as it moves towards Chapel Hill, it obviously serves Duke and the medical center and the VA Medical Center off Irwin Road. Then parallels 15501, eventually crosses over 40, where we have Lee Village, which is a big transit-oriented development opportunity, and then it swings over to the other side of 54 into the Friday Center and the last stop being at UNC Hospitals. Where it will not go, we're often asked, what about the airport? It's not serving the airport. Why is it not serving the airport? Well, I just want to point out, and John, you may want to elaborate on this, this is one part of a vital transportation system. No one transportation solution can solve all problems, clearly. Light rail will provide much needed connectivity in the corridor. It will connect to commuter rail in downtown Durham at the Durham Transit Center. Commuter rail will have a direct connection from Morrisville, probably a rubber-tired, a vehicle connection to the airport. So we're going to improve service to the airport. The transit plan also, and Wake County's transit plan as well, improves bus service that's existing today to the airport. So there will be better connectivity to the airport, clearly. Light rail will not go to the airport. It will link to a service that has better connections to the airport. We get that question a lot, so that's one area. Another area we've been asked about adding perhaps a 19th station would be near the Durham Performing Arts Center. That's under evaluation. It could be added. But those are kind of the two places that I hear a lot about. But John, you might want to talk about connectivity to the light rail system and other places that won't initially be served, but will have much better transit options to them because of that spine, the light rail spine.
Yeah, the decision about where to put an investment like light rail needs to start with what's the intensity of activity, both travel, vehicle activity, and also people living and working and playing. And that corridor that Jeff just described, that is the most intense level of activity in this region. And that's where you need to make the initial investment. Now, as other places grow over time, then you add spurs and you find opportunities to, like the Lee Village, where it's a greenfield opportunity and you can build a neighborhood around it. You can add on, but you need to start with where the most activity is today. And the other thing that's going to be important is to make sure that it's not just a walk to and from stations, but that we're connecting with bicycles and bicycle infrastructure, that we've got the bus systems that are coming in, and that there is good walk access. So lots of parts of Durham and Chapel Hill don't have great sidewalks today. And so we've been working with the city of Durham, the Durham County Planning, City County Planning Office, and they've been doing inventories and they've been prioritizing where to make those improvements. So really, this is not just a transit project, but this is a community building project, and there's lots of players from both the city and the county, and then across the county line in Orange with the towns there thinking about how to take advantage of this investment.
John, I just want to point out, I don't know of any other place in North Carolina and perhaps in the entire Southeast where we have the opportunity within an 18-mile corridor to serve 3 of the top 10 employers in the state, 3 major universities, and 3 major medical centers, all on that corridor. It's a great opportunity.
Right. So when we think about this, it's about transit, it's about reducing traffic, but this is really, a transformative project, as you mentioned, linking together the biggest employers at UNC Chapel Hill, at Duke University Medical Center, the VA, downtown Durham, NC Central. But there's also the potential for, when we talk about all the stops, all the development around them, what are some of the job creation, economic development? Can you give us an idea of what some of those projections are related to those additional investments?
Sure. So we conducted an independent study in 2015, and that study indicated that the light rail system and the investment to build it would generate $175 million in new tax revenue, sales tax revenue, statewide on an annual basis, and over $4.5 billion in new economic output, while creating well over 10,000 jobs from the construction and the development and that occurs around the train station. So tremendous economic outputs from an investment of this nature. And I want to point out that while you think of the light rail system as Durham and Orange counties, and it is, a lot of those suppliers are not just in Durham and Orange County. For example, and we don't know who will actually supply all of the systems yet, but there are large light rail equipment suppliers in Mount Olive that builds catenary systems, and in Goldsboro where power supply systems are built. So it's an impact to the entire state. It's not an impact just to the corridor. It extends way beyond that.
And we've already started conversations with leaders at Durham Tech and other community leaders about that they can provide training so that we have homegrown talent here who is prepared to take these jobs, whether they're during the construction phase or afterwards in the operations and maintenance of the system. So there should be great opportunities.
That's really important. Start planning that now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. So, this is a big investment. I mean, I know we heard a lot from citizens who were concerned about the investment that we're making, but I think what you're describing is that it is a big investment, but we are going to experience a big return on that investment as well. And of course, to think about if we don't do it, what the alternative is for our region. If you could just go over a little bit about the project cost. I know it's a very complicated project. We've got different funding streams with the state funding, local, federal, and now we also have the community funding collaborative playing a role. So if you could just, and also explaining where do the transit revenues come from locally, that would be great.
Sure. So it is a big project. It's a big investment for the community and for the state and the federal government. We think it brings big returns and is well worth the investment. The project stands at about $2.5 billion right now, and that would be funded 50% through a federal grant through what we call the FTA New Starts program. That's for major capital investments. They also have a Small Starts program, but this would fit into the larger category. So 50% federal, 10% of state funding is allowed, and we believe the project will compete very successfully for those funds and will hopefully receive the entire 10%. And then the other 40% of the project would be funded from the local sources in Durham and Orange County. And that's the half-cent sales tax that was passed in 2011 and 2012 by the 2 counties. And it's a vehicle registration tax as well, a fee as well, 2 increased vehicle registration fees that help fund that plan, and a portion of a rental car tax that fund the local portion. All of those local sources are in place today, so no additional local sources except the ones that I just identified that will fund that local portion. We'll also have to borrow a significant amount of money in order to build it because the money doesn't come in quickly enough all at the same time so that you can build the system. So we'll utilize a federal government loan program, TIFIA, that will allow us, they act very much like a patient lender, to build major infrastructure projects throughout the country. We'll utilize that loan program as well to help fund it. But it is 50% federal, 10% state, and 40% local.
Yeah.
And then of that 40% local, there is a share of that we expect to be brought by private landowners along the right-of-way or private organizations or individuals who would contribute. And so this is the notion of a funding and community collaborative that we've convened over the last several months of both public and private leaders to talk about understanding the project, to make a commitment to work toward raising those revenues. And we'll be setting up a nonprofit organization through Go Triangle in order to assist with doing that and have a receiver for those types of donations. And we've got some markers along the way, so we expect to hear from the state at the end of 2018 about the share of revenues. By the middle of 2019, we need to have the local, the state, and this private contributions together and committed so that we can move forward and apply to the federal government for that 50% share of the costs.
So it's a complex process with a lot of moving parts and years and years of work and planning. But I think what's important is for citizens to know that this funding, it's not coming from property tax, it's coming from and other sales tax. It's these very specific transit designated revenues that we have, that we're fortunate to have.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And those
yeah.
same transit revenues fund the bus improvements that we talked about. And in the future, we have planning money set aside for commuter rail so that we can plan the entire West Durham to Garner, Durham Wake commuter rail at the same time and build it in the future. So it's going to fund that as well.
Yeah.
So tell us, what is the next step in this process?
Well, we've applied to enter the engineering phase. So the Durham Orange Light Rail Transit Project has received a record of decision back in February of 2016 on its environmental document, allowing us, and we're at about 30% design. So we've now applied to the federal government, the Federal Transit Administration, to move the project into the engineering or final design phase. We're awaiting word now from them as to whether or not we're approved to go in that final design phase. We provided this additional documentation through the updated bus and rail or transit plans for both counties, which is great. And as we move forward, if we receive clearance to go to the next phase, we will begin. We already designed the project, but we'll ramp that up, hopefully getting to 100% or final design by late 2019. At that time, we'll have the funding picture solidified, we hope, and then we'll apply for what we call a federal full funding grant agreement. We'll also know on the state funds. So a lot of work left to do. We've made progress. We're happy about that. Really thrilled at the work that went into and the result of updating the transit plans in both Durham and Orange County. But we have our foot on the accelerator. We're moving forward. A lot of steps to go through still.
In the near term, there's already a commitment to improve the frequency of bus service between Durham and the Regional Transit Center, which has connections on to Raleigh and the airport in the middle of the day. Right now it's once an hour. This August it'll become once every half hour. And in South Durham, the connections between UNC and that Regional Transit Center will be every half an hour in the middle of the day. So there are already today, or come this August, there'll be improvements for people who are using the system today.
That's great. Now, earlier, I remember you saying it'll be a while before you see people getting on light rail and enjoying the amenity. Can you give me again, or share with our viewers again, when we would be able to see people actually riding the Durham Orange Rail?
The schedule that Jeff laid out about the approvals should allow us to go into construction in 2020, and it's a 6 to 8 year construction period. So the opening day will be after testing and that deemed safe and ready to go following the construction.
That'd be great.
So that's about 10 years from now, right? Is that about 10 years? But I will say, once people see it, starting construction and people see the changes, I think that then it's going to be very exciting because in the scheme of things, 10 years goes like that.
That's exactly right.
It really does. And so I'm excited for this next phase, yeah.
I was living in Charlotte whenever light rail came on board, and it was huge for everyone living in the community. And I was working downtown at the time, and it was just an amazing, energizing time.
Right, absolutely.
It really is transformative. It really is.
Yeah.
There'll be lots of ongoing communication with the community, and particularly property owners and people who live and work along the alignment in preparation for the construction and then during that construction period, because going to feel that the most during the construction period.
Right.
Well, I wanted to ask, because we're going to need to wrap up the show soon, where can people find out more information about the Durham Orange Light Rail and any of the other great project timeline information that we discussed here today?
Right now, the best place is go to our website, ourtransitfuture.com, and you can find information about the full plans, about the light rail project, about the next steps and public meetings that are coming up. You can also access to Wake Transit and then all the current transit systems that are there.
All
Right. And I just want to emphasize, we are a region, you know, Durham, Orange, Wake, and we've talked a lot about the light rail, but we are also going to be going with the Wake Durham commuter rail and start working on that as well.
So huge
So,
opportunities in the region
yes.
to have a dedicated funding source in Durham County, Orange County, and Wake County. There are a lot of regions throughout the country who would love to have that opportunity.
We're very fortunate.
We are.
Yeah.
As we wrap up, are there any last minute comments or anything you want to leave with our viewers?
No, I would just say that in development of the light rail system with the Durham County and with the city, everybody's worked very well together. So it's been a great partnership. We appreciate that. We look forward to that partnership going forward.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for being with us today and helping to inform and educate our citizens about the bus improvements and investments, the light rail and the commuter rail.
So we appreciate the opportunity to discuss it.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for your final thoughts. Well, Chairman Jacobs, this was really exciting an opportunity. My first time working with you and on the show here, and we appreciate this information shared by our viewers. It's been very informative today. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And it was a pleasure having you as a co-host today, Dawn.
Thank you. Thank you. We will continue to stay in touch with purposeful information that our citizens can use to help improve their quality of life. Please join us next time for In Touch with Durham County. Cheers.